Most people have never heard of these crazy stories that take place in Williamsburg, Virginia. Specifically, the colonial era. Here are 3 I bet you've never heard before. When most of y'all hear the word pirate, I bet a lot of y'all think about this guy. And although the beloved Captain Jack Sparrow wasn't real, Captain Blackbeard definitely was. Captain Blackbeard was the most revered pirate during this time, called the Golden Age of Piracy. He had this reputation of being the cruelest, not only to his enemies, but to his crew as well. There was actually a time where England tried to offer a pardon to pirates to kind of end that issue, so Blackbeard and his crew were kind of forced into retirement. Unfortunately for England, Blackbeard and his crew got bored during retirement. What fun is chess when you can go pillaging? So they went back to what they did best. Pirating. No, not the DVDs. Half of them don't even know what DVDs are anymore. Blackbeard was wreaking havoc along the coasts of North Carolina, Virginia, and many in North Carolina felt that the governor of NC was corrupt and not only not stopping Blackbeard, but helping him. So they turned to the Virginia governor for help. And help he did. I guess depending on whose side you're on. Virginia Governor Spotswood hired a lieutenant to take care of Blackbeard, and Blackbeard certainly met his match. Their epic battle ended with Blackbeard losing his head. It actually fell into the ocean and was later retrieved and turned into a drinking mug, kept in the Raleigh Tavern in Williamsburg, Virginia. Blackbeard's crew was also taken back to Williamsburg, Virginia, where they were all tried, and all but 2 of them were sentenced to... Oh, we really need to lighten the mood. Quick, what's a pirate's favorite letter? I bet you're thinking it's R, and you'd be wrong. It's C, like, get it? Let's take a quick break from the death and talk about something that'll make you mad instead. In colonial Virginia, there lived a woman by the name of Susanna Cooper. She was married to a man who not only abandoned her and their child, but took everything with him. In order to try and survive, Susanna opened a tavern all by herself, and it actually did really well. The problem was, though, she was still legally married to her husband, and it was very possible that he could show up at any time and take the tavern and all the money that went with it. So Susanna went to her local government and tried to convince them to do a very secret, small law that applied to only her, that allowed her to own her own property. And it had to be on the down low, because again, we can't let all the other women think that they can own property. That would be silly. And surprisingly, all of the levels of government within the Virginia colony, the local court, House of Burgesses, the governor, they all agreed with her. They wanted to support her and help protect her against this scum of a husband she had. The problem was, this is still a colony. They still gotta ask permission from the king. So the Virginia governor sent over the paperwork, hoping the king would just sign off like he usually does with anything he sends him. And yeah, that didn't happen. The monarch and his advisors said, this is a peculiar case. I'm gonna need to think about it for a little bit.
10 years later.
A decade later, the king finally responds. And he says,
you know, I feel for this woman, I really do. But if we give her rights, what if other women around the country think that they deserve rights? We can't have that.
So women all around the world lost the chance of gaining rights centuries earlier because of this guy. What a gem. Now back to the death, but a step further. Ghosts. Oh, it's too bright for that in here. It's said that Williamsburg, Virginia is home to the most haunted house on the East Coast. Some even say the whole United States. And yes, from the same colonial era of our other stories. This house is the Peyton Randolph house. This house is owned by Peyton Randolph, obviously, who some actually consider the first president of the United States. To be clear, he never actually held that office. But he was president of the First Continental Congress and chaired the meeting where Patrick Henry gave that "give me liberty or give me death" speech. Throughout its history, at least 30 people died inside that house. And in modern days, since it's become a museum and people use it for ghost tours, staff have noticed some guests on the ghost tours suffer medical issues all right in front of that house. This house provided shelter for countless soldiers during the American Revolution, especially French ones, including the French General Marquis de Lafayette, who he himself is the first official person to say, "This place has a spooky vibe." He wrote in his journals that it felt like someone was grabbing his shoulder and trying to keep him from entering the house when he tried to stay there. And yes, there were a lot of very notable individuals who stayed in that house, but don't let the important people distract you from the fact that this place also had a lot of slaves. Although we don't have information on the specific treatment that this group of slaves endured during their lifetime, considering the era, you can only imagine. And considering the aggressive, spooky forces many people report having experienced in and around the house, you can't convince me that all of the individuals who died in that building died peacefully. There are reports of people who slept in the house feeling their limbs being tugged out of bed, people who have felt shaken awake only to wake up and realize no one is there, people reporting they feel like they're being pushed down the stairs, multiple people during different times of history. There's also been reports of children being heard around the house. Women have been heard singing in the yard when no one is there. And I know lots of people love spooky things and find them very interesting and fascinating, but let's not forget, if they're real, why would they be there and why would they be so aggressive? Just something to think about. I really want to go do the ghost tours. I just love spooky things. Will I get scared and cry? Yes! Still want to do it. Thanks for joining me for 5 minutes of history, and hopefully you're 5 minutes smarter.